Habitat 3, the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, took place in Quito, Ecuador, from 17 October 20, 2016. The UN conferences on housing habitat are occurring in the bidecennial cycle 1976, 1996, and 2016. The United Nations General Assembly decided to convene the Habitat 3 conference in its Resolution 66/207. The Habitat 3 conference reinvigorates the global commitment to sustainable urbanization, to focus on the implementation of a new urban agenda. Habitat 3 was one of the first United Nations global summits after the adoption of the post-2015 development agenda. It gave the opportunity to open discussions on important urban challenges and questions, such as how to plan and manage cities, towns, and villages for sustainable development. The discussion of these questions shaped the implementation of new global development and climate change goals. In particular, the conference elaborates on Goal 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals: make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Background: Habitat 2, the second United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, was held in Istanbul, Turkey from June 3–14, 1996. The conference outcomes were integrated in the Istanbul Declaration. World leaders also adopted the Habitat Agenda as a global plan of action for adequate shelter for all, with the notion of sustainable human settlements driving development in an urbanizing world. Habitat I was the first United Nations Conference on Human Settlements, held in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, May 31 to June 11, 1976. Governments began to recognize the need for sustainable human settlements and the consequences of rapid urbanization, especially in the developing world. The conference outcomes were integrated the Vancouver Declaration on Human Settlements, which carried an action plan with 64 recommendations for national action. The conference also established the United Nations Center for Human Settlements, UNCHS Habitat. Structure: Secretary General Joan Claus, the 1997–2006 Mayor of Barcelona and Executive Director of UN Habitat since 2010, was also Secretary General of the Habitat 3. Participants: Habitat 3 invited all member states and relevant stakeholders, including parliamentarians, civil society organizations, regional and local government and municipality representatives, professionals and researchers, academia, foundations, women and youth groups, trade unions, and the private sector, as well as organizations of the United Nations system and intergovernmental organizations. About 30,000 people in total attended the conference, which was based at the Casa de la Cultura Ecuatoriana in Quito. Roadmap: The first session of the Preparatory Committee PrepCom 1 for Habitat 3 was held in New York, United Nations headquarters, from 17 to September 18, 2014. The second session of the Preparatory Committee PrepCom 2 for Habitat 3 was held in Nairobi, Kenya, from 14 to April 16, 2015. The PrepCom 3 will take place from 25 to July 27, 2016, in Surabaya, Indonesia. Policy reports: The process towards Habitat 3 include the elaboration of national and regional reports that will converge in a global report to provide evidence-based knowledge on the implementation of the Habitat Agenda and a comprehensive analysis on the global state of urbanization as well as good practices and tools both at the policy and intervention level. 22 stock-taking papers on relevant topics, Habitat 3 issue papers, were developed through a collaborative exercise of the United Nations system coordinated by the Habitat 3 Secretariat. A number of official regional and thematic high-level meetings involving a wide range of participants are debating priorities for the new urban agenda and policy recommendations in the form of a final participants' declaration. The final declaration from regional and thematic meetings will be considered official inputs to the Habitat 3 process. A total of 10 policy papers on relevant topics will be developed by policy units composed of 20 experts each, coming from different geographic areas and constituencies. Engagement: The debate towards Habitat 3 is an ongoing process that includes past sessions of the World Urban Forums, especially the last one held in 2014 in Medellin, Colombia, and national urban forums to discuss and deliberate on national priority subjects including the preparation of the HIII national reports. Beyond the governmental participation in the process through the General Assembly, The engagement to the conference will include the General Assembly of Partners GAP to serve as a broad-based deliberative platform for non-governmental partners in order to develop a consensus for a joint outcome document and other related matters for Habitat 3. Together Towards Habitat 3 campaign also promote a Global Citizenship Survey 2015/16 to embrace all contributions on the path to the final outcome of the conference harvested through activities and initiatives to raise awareness on the new urban agenda. At Habitat 3, share the standard for sustainable and resilient infrastructure, a global voluntary standard which integrates key criteria of sustainability and resilience into infrastructure development and upgrade, was presented by Global Infrastructure Basel Foundation to the broader public. New Urban Agenda. The primary goal and outcome of the conference was agreement by UN member states on the New Urban Agenda (NUA), which will serve as a guideline for urban development for the next 20 years. A zero draft of the New Urban Agenda was released in May 2016 and subsequently edited. The United Nations General Assembly agreed on the final text in September 2016. The NUA makes frequent references to related UN agreements, including the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development passed in 1992, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the International Guidelines on Urban and Territorial Planning, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030, and the Paris Climate Agreement, all issued in 2015. The four mechanisms envisioned for affecting the New Urban Agenda are: national urban policies promoting integrated systems of cities and human settlements in furtherance of sustainable integrated urban development. Stronger urban governance with sound institutions and mechanisms that empower and include urban stakeholders along with checks and balances, to promote predictability, social inclusion, economic growth, and environmental protection. Reinvigorated long-term and integrated urban and territorial planning and design in order to optimize the spatial dimension of the urban form and deliver the positive outcomes of urbanization. And effective financing frameworks to create, sustain, and share the value generated by sustainable urban development in an inclusive manner. Urban planning. Urban planning is the mechanism by which much of the new urban agenda can be accomplished. In particular, NUA 51 calls for urban planning and design instruments that support sustainable management and use of natural resources and land, appropriate compactness and density, polycentrism, and mixed uses, through infill or planned urban extension strategies as applicable, to trigger economies of scale and agglomeration, strengthen food system planning, enhance resource efficiency, urban resilience, and environmental sustainability. In 66, the parties endorse a smart city model. We commit ourselves to adopting a smart city approach that makes use of opportunities from digitization, clean energy, and technologies, as well as innovative transport technologies, thus providing options for inhabitants to make more environmentally friendly choices and boost sustainable economic growth and enabling cities to improve their service delivery. Right to the city. The NUA includes language about a right to the city, a debated concept referring to popular control over urban processes, but without definite implications for who will prevail when different parties' interests are in conflict. Financing. The NUA calls for both public and private financing. Public financing may be derived from the economic gains from urbanization, including land and property value in infrastructure projects. Development funds and development banks are envisioned as intermediaries for urban financing. NUA 130,153. Private funding is envisioned especially for real estate and housing. The NUA encourages the participation of a diverse range of multilateral financial institutions, regional development banks and development finance institutions, cooperation agencies, private sector lenders and investors, cooperatives, money lenders and microfinance banks to invest in affordable and incremental housing in all its forms. NUA 140. Organizational responses. Louisa Bravo Mercoguaralda, of the Queensland University of Technology, with Hendrik Tai Ben of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, launched the Journal of Public Space on October 19, 2016 at the Habitat 3 Urban Library. The journal deals with issues related to public space and its influence on culture, behavior, and development. The International Urban Development Association Association Internationale du Développement Urbain, INTA met on 27-30 November 2016 for one of a series of 18 Initiative for Habitat 3 conferences which began in May 2015. The conference discussed implementing the new urban agenda, emphasizing the importance of local governments and non-governmental organizations. A group of multilateral development banks, African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, CAF, Development Bank of Latin America, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, European Investment Bank, Inter-American Development Bank Group, Islamic Development Bank, and the World Bank Group issued a joint statement in support of Habitat 3 in committing to support the implementation of the UN's new urban agenda through direct financing, catalyzing other resources, as well as domestic resource mobilization.